The Witch's Dogs, 7 bone-chilling tales that haunted me at midnight. Rain lashed against the windows like frantic fingers clawing for entry. In the dark of the night, the wind howled mournfully, as if echoing the cries of lost souls. And there, in that teetering old house at the edge of town, sat a story waiting to ignite. Little did anyone know, this night would unravel into chaos, beginning with 7 sinister tales whispered among the shadows. Just past midnight, the clock struck 12, sending a chill down spines across the townsfolk as if they shared the same heartbeat of dread. It started with a rustle outside, a low growl that sent a shiver through the air. Folks called it the Witch's Dogs. Legend had it that they prowled the woods, their eyes glowing like embers, waiting to claim those who dared to venture too far into the night. They say one glance from those creatures could freeze your heart, capturing your soul in a vice-like grip. Many who crossed paths with the cursed canines never returned, no trace of them ever found, only silence hanging thick in the moonlight. Lila, a headstrong teenager with spirit and skepticism, had heard the stories countless times. On a dare, she set out alone to the edge of the forest, her flashlight flickering like a heartbeat in the dark. The air grew heavy, thick with whispers from the unseen. Every snap of a twig had her jumping, her body electrified with fear and excitement. Suddenly, the hairs on her neck prickled. She could feel it, something watching her, a presence lurking just beyond the reach of her light. Her chest tightened. The darkness felt alive. What would she find out there? Shadows coiled through the trees, dancing and shifting. As Lila took another cautious step, the ground trembled slightly beneath her feet. Then came the low, haunting growl, vibrating through her bones. Heart-pounding, she turned to flee, but the almost musical sound of barking echoed from the depths of the woods, sweet and sinister. It called her name, as if teasing, daring her to come closer. She froze. Was it real or a trick of her mind? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air crackled with tension. Lila's instincts screamed at her to run, yet something, a strange pull, perhaps held her in place. Then, from the blackness, glowing eyes emerged, piercing through the night like knives. A figure took shape, massive and menacing, surrounded by its pack. The Witch's Dogs. They prowled closer, fur matted and hauntingly beautiful under the ghostly moonlight, teeth bared in wicked grins. Lila gasped, her heart thudding in her ears, drowning out anything around her. Was this the end of her tale? Or merely the first of the 7 stories that haunted the town? The moment hung heavy with dread, every breath a desperate plea for survival. Just as the lead dog opened its mouth to unleash a bone-chilling howl, an idea sparked a way to turn this fear into something powerful. What if she could unravel their mysteries, challenge the legend? But how? As she stumbled back, the dog's howl pierced the night, echoing with a promise of peril. Lila felt an overwhelming sense of urgency, the kind that tugs at your very core. This was no longer about facing myths, it was about confronting her deepest fears. And as she turned to run, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end, but merely the beginning of something far darker. What awaited her when the moon subsided? Would she dare to uncover the truth of the Witch's Dogs, or would they claim her as their own? The darkness pressed in on Lila, wrapping around her like a shroud. She spun on her heel, sprinting back toward the safety of the town. The growls echoed behind her, a cruel reminder of the danger she'd escaped. Each step felt as if she were racing against time itself, the dog's breath hot behind her, a reminder that they relished the hunt. She could almost feel their sharp teeth snapping at her heels. As she burst out of the tree line and into the open field bathed in moonlight, relief flooded through her. But it was short-lived. Instead of running straight to her house, a pull urged her to stop. What was she doing? She couldn't just run and hide. Curiosity, stronger than her fear, gnawed at her mind. What were these beasts? There was something about them, something she needed to understand. Heart pounding, Lila glanced back toward the wall of trees. The glowing eyes had vanished, but the bite of their howls lingered in her ears. She took a deep breath, cooling her flushed cheeks. Maybe she wasn't facing the entire pack alone, she could rely on her friends if they believe her. But could she even convey the terror she felt? A few blocks beyond, her best friend Kiara's house stood like a beacon. After a quick jog, she knocked urgently on the door. Kiara opened it, sleep still clouding her eyes, only to widen at Lila's expression. "What happened?" Kiara gasped, stepping aside. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse." Lila burst through the threshold, her voice shaking. "The witch's dogs are real. They were there watching me. I heard them." Kiara's brow furrowed. "You're serious?" Lila's words tumbled out in a chaotic rush, painting a vivid picture of glowing eyes, growls, and the cruel laughter of the hills. But instead of terror, all she saw was skepticism in her friend's eyes. "Lila, you know it's just a story. But what if it's not? What if they're actually hunting? We have to find out." Lila pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. Kiara hesitated, then bit her lip. "Okay, I'm in, but we should tell the others. They need to know." Hours later, a small group gathered in Kiara's basement, their faces illuminated by a single flashlight. Lila had never been more terrified and excited at once. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, each grappling with disbelief and the pull of adventure. "We could be the first to prove I'd rather keep my bones intact," Sean interrupted, arms crossed defiantly. "Come on. Are we going to let fear own us?" Lila shot back, the courage swelling within her. "We have to do this together, or they'll keep haunting us." The room buzzed with uncertainty, but at the heart of it stirred a daring flame. After a few moments of deliberation, a knot of agreements formed. "Fine. But we stick together," Kiara affirmed, steel creeping back into her voice. That was it. The pact was made. Stepping into the night once more, Lila felt a surge of adrenaline. The witch's dogs awaited them. Under her breath, she whispered a silent promise, determined to unlock the truth. If they weren't just part of a legend, they would find out what they were and, more importantly, why they hunted. But as they reached the periphery of the forest, a low growl resonated from within. The sound sent a ripple of fear through the group. Lila's heart drummed in her chest. They weren't alone. "I think we might be just bitten off more than we can chew," Ryan stammered, scanning the shadows. Before Lila could respond, a silhouette emerged from behind the trees, shrouded in mist. A pair of glowing eyes glared at them, sharp canines glistening in the pale moonlight. Whatever they faced, it was far more dangerous than mere dogs. Was courage enough against the unknown? And what would they uncover when the forest finally swallowed them whole? The truth awaited, lurking just out of sight. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the air like a warning bell. Lila's breath hitched as the creature stepped forward. It was bigger than any dog she had ever seen, its fur as dark as the night around them. Sensations flooded her: fear, disbelief, and a strange thrill, all weaving together in a frenzied tapestry. "Guys, maybe we should," Kiara started, her voice trembling. "No. We need to hold our ground," Lila insisted, though her voice faltered as the creature moved closer. The rest of the group huddled together, fear pooling in their wide eyes. They'd chosen adventure over safety, and now there was no backing down. The beast cocked its head, studying them with those terrifying, luminous eyes. Time felt frozen, every heartbeat resonating in Lila's ears. She could feel the weight of its gaze, heavy and probing, as if it was sifting through their very souls. Memories of her parents' warnings mingled with horror stories about the witch's dogs, all coming back in an oppressive wave. "Lila, what do we do?" Sean whispered, his bravado crumbling under the creature's dreadful watch. Maybe it's curious?" Ryan suggested, his voice quaking. "Like it wants us to follow?" Lila's heart raced at the suggestion. That couldn't be right, could it? But the curiosity inside her warred with instinct. They could run, dart back into town, dismiss the legend as pure folklore, or dare to believe there was something more here. Something worth uncovering. What if it's protecting something? Kiara breathed, taking a step back. We should leave. Now. Before Lila could respond, the beast lunged, its powerful legs propelling it forward with an intensity that made her heart drop. But instead of attacking, it skidded to a halt just feet away. The ground trembled slightly beneath its weight, and the world seemed to hush. It opened its jaws, revealing those glistening fangs, but instead of a growl, a strange howl escaped, almost a song mingling with the wind. The sound twisted around them, binding the group in a surreal moment of awe and fear. The howl resonated within Lila's chest, echoing a fragmented memory from her childhood, the last time she felt true safety beneath the stars. Something was aching to be understood. Look! It's showing us something, Lila murmured, stepping forward despite Kiara's anxious tug on her sleeve. Then, as if understanding her curiosity, the beast turned and bounded deeper into the forest, glancing back as if to say, "Follow me." "Are you crazy? We can't just chase after it," Kiara protested. The look in her eyes pleaded for Lila to reconsider, but Lila could already feel it pulsing within her, the undeniable pull of the unknown, a compulsion to discover what the shadows had hidden for too long. "We need to know why they hunt. This could be our only chance." With one last glance at her friends, she bolted after the beast before anyone could protest further. The darkness enveloped her again, but this time, it felt different. It was a living, breathing entity thrumming with energy and secrets. Kiara, Sean, and Ryan hesitated before gathering the strength to follow, their doubts crumbling under the weight of adrenaline and fear. They chased after Lila, each step pulling them deeper into the heart of the forest, away from the safety of their homes, but what awaited them was not merely a truth, it was a revelation far more powerful. As they ventured beneath the twisted branches, more growls began to echo through the trees, each one a reminder that they were stepping into a world woven with danger. "Lila, wait!" Kiara cried out, but it was too late. The beast had disappeared into the shadows, and Lila stood at an ominous clearing, heart racing. At the center lay remnants of an ancient ritual, a circle of stones crackling with energy. The air buzzed around them as if the very spirits of the forest urged them forward. But the growls drew closer, a symphony of chaos blending with the ominous energy. What were the witch's dogs guarding? And could they handle whatever darkness stirred just beyond the circle? The answers loomed, waiting to leap from the shadows. Lila stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, the ancient stones looming tall around her like silent sentinels. The air felt thick, almost electric, swirling with unseen energy. Each growl reverberated through her bones, a primal warning that collapsed her bravado. She raised her hands instinctively, the gentle tremor betraying her fear. "Guys, we shouldn't be here," Kiara's voice wavered, cutting through the heavy silence. The tension in the air made every breath feel labored. "We can't turn back now," Lila snapped, but her voice lacked confidence. The urge to flee warred with the enchantment pulling her forward, an allure impossible to resist. Sean moved closer, eyes darting nervously around. "Can't we just take a look? I mean, what if?" His voice trailed off as another spine-chilling growl echoed around them. "What if it's too late?" The beast that had led them here was nowhere to be seen, swallowed by the shadows. But Lila sensed its presence, lurking in the darkness. She took a step into the circle, drawn to a series of unusual markings etched into the stones. They shimmered faintly, pulsing with a heartbeat of their own. "Do you feel that?" Lila whispered, more to herself than to her friends. The markings seemed to come alive beneath her fingers. Just as they shimmered brighter, a cold wind swept through the clearing, making her shiver. "Lila, please." Kiara's plea bubbled with desperation. "We're not like the legends. We don't belong here." Another growl emerged, closer now, and this time it was joined by a chorus of haunting howls, echoing through the trees like the mournful cries of the night. The ground rattled beneath their feet. Every instinct screamed at them to turn and run, yet Lila felt a strange sense of calm envelop her. The stones around her vibrated, each thrum resonating deeply within her. Images flashed in her mind, figures in cloaks chanting, flickering flames, the wild, maddening eyes of the witch's dogs, and a darkness that consumed everything. Her heart raced at the realization. This place wasn't just a relic of the past, it held a power that could transform. "Let us go," Sean urged, stepping back, but his panic only seemed to amplify the urgency around them. Suddenly, a silhouette burst from the trees, and the beast emerged once more, eyes glowing, lips curled back in what looked disturbingly like a smile. Lila dropped her gaze, stunned. The creature didn't seem hostile. Instead, it lingered just beyond the circle, watching them with a knowing intensity, urging them to decipher the answers swirling in the air. Lila Kiara's voice trembled. What if it's asking us to activate something? What if we shouldn't touch it? Lila's breath hitched. Or what if this is the key? The answers we seek. She turned her gaze back to the stones, feeling the pulsating energy throb beneath her hand. But just as she opened her mouth to speak again, a chilling howl erupted from the depths of the woods. The beast recoiled, its fur bristling. Fear radiated from their group now, palpable and suffocating. Lila felt the tension snap like a taut string, and in that second, she knew this wasn't merely an adventure anymore. They had trespassed into sacred territory. An unseen force slammed against the clearing, and the air thickened, suffocating in its pressure. The markings blazed with blinding light, illuminating the surrounding darkness. The growls morphed into a cacophony of voices, chanting an ancient language that felt all too familiar to Lila. Witches' dogs! Kiara shrieked, backing away as shadows danced along the edges of the gathering. They're angry! The beast turned, leaping toward the darkened trees, and Lila felt her heart plunge. It wasn't leading them to answers anymore, it was retreating, warning them of the danger they had unwittingly awakened. A primal dread gripped her as the ground ceded and shook. What had they stumbled upon? And what would happen next when the very guardians of the forest realized they stood in its heart? Lila, run! Sean's voice broke through her fog of confusion, urgency lacing his tone. But even as she turned, with the others, a force beyond her comprehension held her in place. The darkness loomed closer, and a powerful howl ripped from the wilderness, blending with the sharp crackle of energy encircling the stones, casting shadows that danced wildly around them. Their choice was made, but what fate awaited them at the hands of the witch's dogs? And what startling truth lay buried within the heart of the forest, ready to surface and howl for vengeance? The ground shook violently beneath Lila's feet, sending a jolt of panic racing up her spine. The air was thick with an eerie tension, pulsing with energy that felt alive, almost sentient. Each heartbeat matched the furious rhythm of the stones, an ancient call that echoed from the depths of the forest. Don't just stand there! Kiara screamed, her voice cracking as she pulled at Lila's sleeve. But Lila felt anchored, as if the very ground beneath her held her in a vice grip. Something was awakening, calling to her. Another howl erupted, sharp and filled with hunger. Lila's mind raced. She could almost see the remnants of the protective ward around them weakening, the energy spilling out like spilled ink. Shadows slithered closer, their whispers brushing against her skin, carrying the seductive promise of power and knowledge. Were the witch's dogs circling them now? Were they mere spectators, or were they preparing for a reckoning? Let go of me! Lila gasped, tearing herself away from Kiara, who looked heartbroken and terrified. Lila, be careful! Sean urged, his voice barely rising above the cacophony of howls, now intertwined with the murmurs of the ancient chant reverberating through the clearing. Each sound drummed against her ears, hypnotizing her. The markings on the stones glowed brighter still, illuminating the forest with a white-hot light. The beast, once more just a shadow among shadows, seemed drawn closer by the rising energy, its eyes glinting with a knowing brightness. It stopped, turning to Lila, almost as if waiting, urging her forward. What did it want from her? Did it truly want her to linger in this madness? Lila, please. You're going to get us killed. Sean shouted again, his panic palpable, but there was something raw, something powerful igniting within her. The shadows danced closer, forming shapes that almost looked human, eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. Lila realized she wasn't simply a bystander. This was her moment. She could feel the knowledge of the ages brushing against her mind, luring her deeper into a forgotten legacy. With trembling hands, she reached toward the glowing markings, her fingertips tingling as they met the surface of the stone. The moment she made contact, the howls grew deafening, a multitude of voices rising in a chorus of agony and triumph. The markings surged with energy, enveloping her in radiant light, but the shadows recoiled, scattering like flocks of startled birds, as though the stones were rejecting them. Lila gasped, a sudden wave of fear washing over her. What were they? Were they spirits, or guardians of the stone? She felt a rush of power then, filling her lungs and racing in her veins. It was intoxicating. Memories began to flow in her mind, images of the forest, the witch's dogs running wild, a female figure draped in darkness holding the hands of beasts. Were they connected? Did this legacy belong to her? Lila! Kiara screamed, tears streaking down her face. Get away from there! The beast's eyes fixed on her, urging her to break free, to make a choice. With a harsh breath, Lila closed her eyes, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Could she take the risk? The ground trembled again, this time with an ominous threat. The chanting rose to a fever pitch, drowning out her thoughts. She had to decide. Suddenly, the forest exploded into a frenzy of sound. The howls transformed into anguished cries, screams echoing off the stones. Lila's heart raced as the shadows lunged forward, angry and desperate. She stumbled back, her hand still pressed against the stone, feeling the heat radiate through her skin. Run! We need to go now. Sean pulled at her, urgency ringing in his voice, but how could she leave? The power surged all around her, pulling her deeper. Then it hit her, a realization that shattered the chaos around her. The stories weren't just stories. They were warnings. And they were true. What have we awakened? She breathed, terror creeping into her bones as the shadows hissed around them. The moment hung heavy in the air, thick with a reckoning neither of them could comprehend. Would they be devoured by the darkness they had stirred? Or could they escape the legacy laid out before them? Before she could answer, a blood-curdling roar erupted from the forest, rattling her to the core. She felt her spirit waver. Could they survive the real wrath of the witch's dogs, or had they sealed their fate by just being here, in this cursed place? But as the howl echoed against the night, she knew the real question was, how far would she go to uncover the truth? The ground pulsated beneath Lila, a living entity thrumming with energy. She could hardly hear Kiara's frantic pleas over the rising tide of sound. The wailing shadows entwined with the desperate cries of the forest. Fear clutched at her throat, tight like a noose. Lila, we can't stay. Sean shouted, his eyes wide with terror. He tugged at her arm, but Lila felt the pull of the stone's energy more than his grip. It was an ancient call, something primal awakening inside her, fighting against her instinct to flee. Then, the roar pierced the air again, a bone-chilling sound that seemed to echo through her very soul. It felt like warning, or perhaps a promise of unspeakable horrors to come. What did the witch's dogs want from her? Why did the shadows dance closer, their fiery eyes locked onto her? Lila's fingers tingled as she pulled away from the stone, the warmth dissipating like a fading dream. She turned just in time to see shadows converge at the edge of the clearing, coalescing into figures, their forms twisting and writhing. They were not merely watching, they were worshipping, waiting for her call. Fragments of her vision burst into clarity, bloodied images of sacrifice and power, every story suddenly sharper, more vivid. Kiara's face was splashed with moonlight, and tears glimmered like jewels in her eyes. Please, we need to go. Lila's heart raced with a mix of dread and an insatiable thirst for power. What if I can control it? Control what? This madness? It's too dangerous. Shauna's voice cracked, desperation saturating every syllable. She didn't answer, her mind racing. What if she could harness the very essence of the shadows? What if power like that could protect not just her, but everyone she loved? The markings glowed brighter, bathing the clearing in an ethereal light, revealing secrets woven in the stones long forgotten by time itself. The shadows deepened, growing darker and angrier, as if they could sense her wavering resolve. The chorus of howls crescendoed, and the air vibrated with palpable anxiety. With a deep breath, Lila summoned the courage she hadn't known she possessed. Her voice broke free, raising above the chaos, raw and potent. What do you want from me? The shadows encroached, a tide of darkness leaping towards her. But instead of recoiling, she stood firm, feeling the surge of ancient energy swirling around her. There was a flicker of recognition in their eyes, the beginnings of a challenge accepted. Suddenly, the beast emerged, towering above the treetops, its eyes glowing like molten embers. Its presence radiated a mix of terror and allure, drawing her in. The creature stood poised at the edge of the shadows, as if ready to protect her or devour her. "Lila!" Sean called out, panic filtering through his words. "Don't!" But she didn't hear him. All she could feel was that intoxicating rush, an alchemy of fear, courage, and fate. The ground beneath them shivered like a living creature, caught between two worlds, the one they knew and the one they dared to touch. Then, with a fierce twist of her heart, she stepped forward into the waiting maw of shadows and wonder. The world exploded in chaos around them, the howls merging with her heartbeat. In that moment, she understood, the truth and the darkness were intertwined. As she was engulfed in the shadows, the last lucid thought that raced through her mind was a terrifying realization. She had awakened something far more powerful than she could ever imagine. What awaited them in that nexus of darkness? And could she wield the power she had dared so deeply to touch? The crystal-clear howl punctuated the air again, dragging the remnants of her resolve away. This time, the question lingered far beyond her own grasp. What would they all become? Lila felt the shadows wrap around her like a suffocating embrace, every inch of her skin prickling with a sensation that was both foreign and intoxicating. The air thickened, charged with the pulsing energy of the stone and the howling calls that sent ripples through the very fabric of her being. She had crossed a threshold, and the world as she knew it dimmed into a haze of darkness. Suddenly, a cacophony erupted as the shadows writhed and twisted, their shapes morphing into grotesque figures. The presence of the beast loomed larger, its roar echoing with a primal intensity that shook the ground beneath her feet. Lila's heart raced, the fear intertwining with exhilaration, each beat punctuated by the looming threat of obliteration. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice lost in the tumult around her. She glanced back at Sean and Kiera, their faces cast in stark terror, reflecting her inner turmoil. Panic surged through Sean, his eyes wide and desperate, while Kiera stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth in horror, but Lila felt unyielding. What if this was the moment she could finally claim her destiny? "I can control this!" she yelled, unsure if she was convincing herself or asserting her right to the shadows. The shadows surged forward, brushing against her skin like ice. In that instant, she felt a connection, an invisible thread tugging at the depths of her soul. Memories flickered before her eyes, her grandmother's whispered tales of power, of sacrifice, of the witch's dogs that roamed in the dark, seeking a bond with the chosen one. She had always dismissed it as mere myth. Now, those myths felt alarmingly real. The beast reared closer, its molten gaze locked onto hers. The glowing embers radiated both an invitation and a challenge. Lila took a trembling breath, stepping deeper into the fray. She began an incantation that rose from her subconscious, words connecting with the shadows in a tongue she didn't know she possessed. "I summon you, hear my call." The shadows halted, as if caught in a spell of their own. The beast tilted its head, the air humming with renewed energy. The faces formed within the shadows twisted into expressions of anticipation, and for a fleeting moment, Lila felt their collective yearning, a hunger for connection, for power. Sean's scream shattered her focus. "Lila! Get back!" He lunged forward, but Kiera held him firm. "Let her. She knows what she is doing." But did she? A jolt of self-doubt gripped Lila as the shadows drew nearer. They moved with a life of their own, swirling like a storm, and she felt the intensity of their presence push against her psyche. "This is insane," she thought, the reality of the situation crashing down like a wave. The beast responded, its deep growl resonating with a command that cut through the chaos. It turned its fiery gaze toward her, beckoning. Lila's breath caught. She could either join them in their dark desires or bear the weight of their wrath. Just then, the shadows began to swirl faster, their frantic movements shifting from worship to aggression. Lila's heart raced. What if they don't want me to lead? What if they mean to consume me? As that thought crashed over her, the air thickened with tension. She was at the center of an ancient struggle, power swirling around her as if testing her resolve. The sound of their howls faded, replaced by a silence so profound it rang in her ears. Kiera and Sean glanced at each other, fear etched deep in their expressions. "Lila, please. Make a choice." Kiera shouted, her voice trembling with urgency. She knew they were right. The line was drawn. She could lead or be lost to the shadows forever. Would she turn back to the light or embrace the darkness that called so sweetly? In that moment, Lila reached deep within herself, ready to either shatter the veil that separated light from dark, or be consumed by a world she had dared to touch. The shadows surged, an impending crush of force threatening to swallow her whole. Determined, she prepared herself for the final, catastrophic decision, one that would shape her and her friends forever. But the question still lingered in her mind as chaos erupted: was this dark promise meant to empower or destroy? The shadows tightened their grip, an avalanche of darkness refusing to relent. Lila gulped hard, feeling the icy tendrils creep up her arms, wrapping around her throat as if to choke off her breath. She could feel Kiara's and Sean's eyes boring into her, their worries tangible in the thick air. She was their beacon or their curse. "Lila!" Sean shouted again, voice raw with desperation. "Get out of there!" But Lila stood her ground, adrenaline fueling her resolve. She sensed the shadows quivering, as if teetering on the brink of something monumental. The beast inched ever closer, and she felt that magnetic pull deepen, each heartbeat synchronizing with the relentless power swirling around her. With newfound conviction, Lila thrust her hands forward, palm out. "I am not afraid," she declared, her voice soaring above the cacophony. "I will not be consumed. I seek a bond, not servitude." The words echoed in the stillness that followed, bouncing back from the depths around her. The shadows paused, caught off guard. She could practically hear the collective breath of the darkness, a heavy sigh that resonated with disbelief. For a moment, it felt like the entire universe hinged on her choice. She wished she could see their faces if they were faces and understand what they truly desired. The beastess roar erupted again, flooding the air with pulsating sound, shaking her bones. "This is a game of power, little witch," it seemed to bellow. "Let us, or face your end." Tension knotted in Lila's stomach. Did she have what it took to take control? She had always felt out of place, lost in the noise of the world that mocked her ambitions. But now, here on the precipice, she knew she held a glimmer of potential to break free from her fears. Lila focused, parsing through the barrage of shadows swirling around her. They did not want to destroy her, they yearned for recognition, for her to acknowledge their existence. "I feel you," she shouted, her voice steady. "I know you're here. I have the power to connect with you, but I refuse to be your puppet." Their shadows writhed again, flickering with uncertainty. A low growl rumbled from the beast, harmonizing with the frenzied movement of the shadows. Lila watched as the grotesque figures began to settle, shifting from chaotic to curious, assessing her words to eye. In that fragile moment, a flicker of hope ignited within her. She could become their leader, the one who could shift the tide from destruction to intent. But the risk loomed large. What if they turned against her? "Choose wisely, Lila," Kiara cried out, voice strained. Her terrified eyes darted between Lila and the beast, and Lila felt the raw connection sparking between their hearts. Sweat dripped down Lila's brow, pooling at her temples. Her instincts screamed for retreat, yet something else pushed her forward. "If you wish to walk with me in the light, then you must yield." She barely recognized her own voice, a fierce, commanding echo that resonated through the darkness. The shadows hesitated, seemingly weighing her words, the air alive with unspoken anticipation. With an even mixture of dread and exhilaration, Lila readied herself for the impending conclusion. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the shadows roared in protest, their ethereal forms flickering wildly. An ominous wind whipped around Lila, carrying with it the scent of burning coal and decay. "You think a mere declaration can tame the darkness?" The beastess voice boomed, ripping through Lila's confidence. As the shadows coiled tighter around her legs, she realized the choice had not merely been hers to make. Something deep within the heart of the darkness was awakening, and she was its reluctant catalyst. "Then let us see what this bond can truly manifest," Lila shouted, and with that, she plunged deeper into the unknown. What she was about to unleash would either save her or consume everything she held dear. And as the shadows seemed to roar in agreement, Lila knew the next choice would be far darker. What lay ahead with her newfound bond remained shrouded in shadowy mystery, poised to unravel everything she thought she understood about power and sacrifice. The ground trembled like a living thing, every pulse vibrating through Lila's bones. The shadows surged, twisting and contorting, hungry for acknowledgement. Lila was caught in their thrall, a moth drawn to the flame, yet she was no longer afraid. With each ragged breath, confidence bubbled in her chest, mingling with fear and uncertainty. "Together we can create a new path," she cried, her voice rising above the howls of the beast. The shadows writhed as if tasting her words, and for a fleeting moment, a sense of paradoxical calm settled over the chaos. A ripple of light pierced through the darkness, and in that instant, she could almost see glimmers of the restless spirits yearning to be freed, but just as quickly, the darkness sharpened. A scream erupted from the depths, echoing with the agony of 1,000 souls. "You are a foolish girl," the beast roared, shaking the very air around them. "You think this is about a bond? This is survival." Kiera and Sean stood on the fringes, their eyes wide with horror and disbelief, like spectators at a horrific play. Lila felt their panic wash over her, each pulse of their heartbeats echoing in her ears, and it anchored her. "I can't let them suffer," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The shadows began to morph, their forms shifting into nightmares. They took on the shapes of what haunted her most, horrifying echoes of people lost, faces contorted in anguish. Lila staggered back, a knot tightening in her throat. "What is this?" she shouted, fury lacing through her fear. "You think you can break me?" The beast laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Oh, but little witch, we already know your fears. You are the spark, the key. Give in to us, and we'll grant you power beyond comprehension." "No!" Lila screamed, fighting against the cold grip tightening around her heart. "I will not succumb to darkness." Sweat dripped off her brow, and with sheer determination, she thrust her palms forward again. "If you want to walk with me, then show me your true form. Come forth and reveal your essence." The shadows recoiled, the grotesque figures writhing back as if Lila had both terrified and intrigued them. The beast roared again, but it hesitated. "Dare you extend an invitation to madness? Call it what you want," Lila shouted, her heart racing. "But I will not run from you. I will welcome you into the light if you're willing to be more than mere shadows." The ground shook violently again, but something had changed. The shadows began to morph, swirling together in a cascade of movement, a silent conversation sparking in between them. Lila could feel the energies realigning, and she dared to hope. As the darkness folded into itself, the tension unfurled with a wailing sigh, and suddenly the grotesque faces blurred, replaced by fragments of aching memories and longings for vindication. Instead of fear, Lila felt an overwhelming surge of empathy. They were lost, adrift in a storm that had long since ravaged them. "Listen to my voice," she called. "I will fight for you. Together, we can break this curse." But just as the tide seemed to shift, an echoing voice resonated from the shadows. "And who will lead this rebellion? Who will give us purpose beyond your small world?" Cold sweat trickled down Lila's spine as doubt gripped her heart. Was she truly ready to walk this path? Would her decision to draw them close unleash something far darker than she could ever control? The shadows swirled faster now, an abyss of uncertainty drawing near. With her heart pounding like a war drum, she took a step forward. It was now or never. "Together, we can find the truth," she proclaimed, every word woven with desperation. "But first, you must trust me. You must prove your intentions." The shadows pulsed in response, as if pondering her challenge, and in that breath of silence, Lila knew real danger awaited. Then, high above, a cold wind howled through the remnants of forgotten souls, unfurling a chilling confirmation. Lila could feel it. The bond she de-initiated was both a trailblazer and a ticking time bomb. What lurked beyond the veil of shadows remained obscured, and the deeper she waited, the more she realized a reckoning was inevitable. Would the darkness dissolve into her command, or would it become her worst nightmare realized? The ground rippled with inhospitable energy, each pulse a warning that echoed through Lila's body as she faced the abyss that threatened to swallow her whole. She had thundered into this chaos with every ounce of courage she could muster, but now, standing amidst the wails and flickers of shadowy forms, dread clawed at her heart. "Lila," Kiera's voice broke through the clamor, raw and imploring. "We're losing you. Trust me." Lila screamed, grounding herself against creeping panic. This was her decision, her battle to fight. The shadows twisted around her, circumnavigating her fragile resolve, But she stood firm, anchored by the weight of her whispered promise that no one would be sacrificed this night. "You need me, don't you?" she boomed, her spirit ignited as the chilling visage of the beast loomed ominously, glaring down at her with glinting eyes, but instead of intimidation, adoration sparked in Lila's heart. "Show me the truth," she declared, her voice now surging with primal energy. The creature growled low, its head inclining slightly, as if contemplating her audacity. Suddenly, a bone-rattling howl erupted throughout the trees, shaking leaves from branches, chanting a raucous chorus. The shadows danced around Lila like frenzied spirits, but as they spiraled closer, their once aggressive forms began to soften, morphing into flashes of lost faces, reflections of wandering souls, abandoned and desperate for recognition. Their echoing cries pulsated around her, an amalgamation of loneliness and sorrow. They weren't malevolent, they were misunderstood guardians, woven into the fabric of the witch dogs, entangled in a web far more complex than folklore had ever conveyed. "Please," Lila bellowed, grappling for control, "I will help you. But you need to help me understand." Her heart raced as she felt the shadows respond, moving with a grace that mirrored her plea, their energy around her quieting, falling into a uniform rhythm. The beast lowered its massive head, watching her like a patron of a ritual, its fiery gaze piercing her soul. "You wish for us to trust you? To show you the past?" It rumbled, the weight of its voice vibrating through her body. "Yes." Lila breathed, fear transforming into determination. "And in return, I will make sure our existence isn't lost in silence. I will share your stories." Around her, the shadows shifted, swirling into images, fleeting visions of ancient rites, of struggles and survival entwined with loss. Each tale unfurled like a tapestry of shared suffering, the weight of history heavy in the air. The beast raised its snout, letting out a long, keening howl that echoed through the forest, and an infinite understanding rippled through Lila. It was a call for unity, a summons for healing through shared stories instead of fear. As the intense energy beckoned her forward, Lila felt a surge of clarity wash over her. The shadows danced with renewed light, the figures of the lost souls echoed their appreciation through movement, urging her to lead them. She took a step into the swirling vortex, daring to embrace the depths she had almost feared, and just as she stood at the very edge, a voice cut through the darkness with an urgent cry. "Don't forget us!" Sean shouted, his voice filled with panicked courage. Lila turned, her heart aching at the sight of her friends torn between fear and unwavering loyalty. They stood close together, silhouettes against the chaos but ready to stand by her side. "You're not alone," Kiara breathed, her own fear shimmering beneath the surface. With a deep breath, Lila found her strength, reaching back for them. "Come." She extended her hand, anchoring the energy between them. The shadows seemed to respond, enveloping them all with a warmth that washed over the cold dread of the night. Suddenly, the howls turned into a symphony, swirling energies intertwining their voices. Together they were strong, weaving through the darkness like a unified force as they uncovered the truth of those lost souls. Lila felt the bond deepen, the boundaries between their fears dissolving into what could be a powerful coalition of trust and understanding, not just among them, but with the grieving spirits surrounding them. Each story revealed layers of wisdom that transcended time, lessons and victories echoing through the ages. The forest transformed, the shadows now luminous beings, intertwining with the four friends, their powerful essence drawing strength from Lila's hope. And, bit by bit, the curse over the witch's dogs began to wane, a new dawn lighting the alcove with a single resonant howl. The beast drew closer, joining the cacophony of voices bolstered by unity. Lila stood at the forefront, hearts entwined with her friends in trust, the phantoms around them swirling like a magnificent storm, no longer demons to be feared, but allies in their newfound path toward healing together. As dawn broke, bleeding light into the dark, the forest exhaled a sigh, a fragile peace settling upon the earth. Lila opened her eyes, feeling the surge of gratitude pulsing around her like the heartbeat of the world. Together, she whispered, knowing they had uncovered something far deeper than truth. And somewhere deep in the heart of the woods, the legend of the witch's dogs began to shift, entwined with newfound tales of connection, sacrifice, and power. And now, laughter echoed across the horizon, blanketing the town, promising a brighter path ahead, wrapped in the stories that would never be forgotten. Stay tuned for more adventures and thrilling moments. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your thoughts about this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see how this epic tale wraps up. Your support means the world.